Welcome to Dental Business RX. Practice success in 30 minutes or less.
Thank you for calling ABC Dental.
So let's say things are not going well in your practice. Collections are down, there's tons of opening on the doctor and hygiene schedule, and new patients have tanked. You do the usual, and you talk to several of your team members, especially at the front, to find out, what's going on. In your conversations, many reasons are advanced as to what's behind this sudden slump. It's the economy. A lot of patients don't have money and they're putting treatment off. Many of the new patients we're getting are low quality. It seems that people don't care about their teeth as much as they used to, and no one can get approved for financing. So stunned and not sure what to do, you decide that the first target would be canceling your marketing. After all, it seems to only attract low-quality new patients who can't pay and don't care about their teeth, and it's expensive. So the following month, things get worse. You start thinking about taking a part-time associate job to supplement your income, or maybe joining a bunch more plans. Ownership can be tough. And I guess my question is this you, or some hopefully less severe version of you? Well, what's wrong with this picture? And ideally, how would you approach or handle an area or areas of your practice that are not doing well? Well, that's what I want to talk about in this week's episode. My name is Jeff Bloomberg, and I'm your host. And the best place to start here would be with you, because obviously you're the one looking at this stuff, and you're the one who has to solve it, right? So let's use the example above, because we could technically apply this to any area of your practice. But we started off talking about the statistics going down. But let's grab one of them, new patients. So let's say we have a new patient problem. We're either not getting an adequate return. Now this assumes you're at least trying to do something to get new patients. If you're doing nothing, no internal marketing or referral program or no external marketing, well, I wouldn't expect much, right? But if you are, let's say you are doing it and you're just not getting an adequate return, that could be one problem. Or you could be humming along and they drop off all of a sudden. So let's say that happens to you. So what should you do? Well, a lot of this has to do with the lens you're looking at it through. And let me explain. If you think things like this, just sudden statistic drops or non-functioning areas just quote unquote happen, it's sort of fate, there's no real definable reason or reasons behind it, well, you're going to seem a bit lost here. Or you might look at something like this, decide you're not a marketing expert and there's no way you'd be able to figure out what's going on. Or you could also find yourself in a position where you easily buy any random reason that's advanced for the drop. In other words, you come to me, I'm at your front, you say, Jeff, why is this happening? I go, well, doctor, it's because the economy. And you go, oh, it must be the economy. So let's say you do that. You buy any random reason that's, advanced for the drop. Bad quality new patients, or marketing isn't working, etc. And then you take action prior to thoroughly investigating to determine what the real reason is. All three of these points above will get you into trouble. You'll also, as an owner executive, find yourself upset and angry a lot, and eventually apathetic about the whole situation. There's just nothing you can do. So clearly, this is not where we want to be. I guess you could, but I wouldn't recommend being in this condition. So what would be the alternative? Well, in its simplest sense, you'd have to have a decent understanding of whatever it is you're trying to fix or correct. So again, we're talking new patients, but again, this applies to, I said again twice there, sorry folks. This applies to anything in your practice. We're talking new patients. You would have to understand how the cycle of production for new patients works. And I'm going to explain this, but I'm just laying this out here so you can get what I mean. How the cycle of production for new patient works, what to expect, what's an acceptable level of production along the cycle of production, and what is not acceptable. If you understand it well enough, and believe me, you actually kind of do know a lot of it, you just don't realize it, you can always find out what's going wrong and figure out how to fix it. And like I said, this applies to any area of your practice. So how would we do this? Well, there's two simple things. One, we'd have to understand the cycle of production for whatever area we're trying to fix. What is the cycle of production here? And two, we'd have to have a good grasp on what acceptable levels of performance are at each step on the cycle. Now, I realize as I just said this, it sounded kind of like corporate speak, the cycle of production, acceptable performance, or whatever. And it could sound potentially boring. And in my endless quest to not be boring, I'm going to break this down into real life situations. You can see how easy this actually is. So again, we're talking new patients. We're not getting enough, despite whatever marketing we're doing. So how would we apply this? All right, well, the first thing we'd have to do is map out the cycle of production for a new patient. To do this, we stand at the end of the cycle, the deliverable, which is a new patient in your chair, and map the step backwards, or map it backwards step by step, rather, to the beginning. This is how we map out the cycle. So let's do this. The final step is the patient is in your chair and you're meeting them. Here's Mr. Jones. They're in the chair. They're a new patient. What happens right before that? We can get ridiculous with this. He drives his car to your office. No. I mean, what are the actions the office does? Well, he was confirmed for that appointment. What happens before confirmation? Well, they were scheduled. Okay, what happens before they were scheduled? They were converted. That call or form lead or however that person found out about your practice, whoever handled them did well. They had good phone skills. And prior to that, you had to have a response. So you follow this backwards. I have a new patient in the chair. Patient was confirmed before they arrived. They were scheduled before that. They called and someone handled them on the phone very well, and they responded to something. Somehow they got interested in my practice. All right? So we see that step 1 in the cycle. Step 5 is the patient in the chair. Step 1 is a response. We get some form of a response. We also call that, in marketing terms, a reach, right? Or a lead. That reach can come in different forms. You might get a call from Google PPC or a postcard or Facebook or a referral. Someone sees a billboard for your practice or they see your sign as they're driving through your strip mall, whatever. But they get interested. Now, it might also be a form lead. It might be an implant funnel lead. In a lot of cases, I've said this numerous times just because people still miss this. If you do Google pay-per-click and you have a landing page, which if you do that, you probably do, you'll notice if you go to your landing page, there's a button. Click here to make an appointment. Now, they're not actually making an appointment. They're sending you an email. In many cases, these leads get missed. So they're on your dashboard. And if I sound like I'm talking something you don't understand, trust me, this is stuff. If you have Google pay-per-click, you have this. You'll have a dashboard that shows the calls coming in so you can listen to the calls. There'll also be form leads on there. You need to call these people. Anyway, so we get a call or a form lead. So one other form of response I'm going to get into here in a second, but let's pick up on these. So our prospective patient, Mrs. Mary Smith, calls the practice or fills out a form. We now have a name or a call from someone who is potentially interested in our services. What does that ultimately mean? Well, in that case, our marketing worked, whatever marketing that was, sign, service, ad, etc., at least for this person. Now, ideally, we're analyzing this as we go, as I'm explaining it to you, but for now, we're just going to establish what the cycle of production is. So in this case, we now have a lead. So we've had a call or a lead. What happens next? Step 2 is someone actually has to speak to this patient who has decent phone skills. We need to convert this person from a name or someone interested in our business to becoming a patient. Right? Now, there's a number of things that go on here. There's the quality of the person handling the patient on the phone. There's having adequate input forms. A lot of these things can save you a ton of time. Like when you're finding out more about the patient, when you're doing your new patient input form, there might be certain questions you want the patient asked before you even see them as the doc when they come into practice. But anyway, beside that point, whoever handles this has to do a good job so that they can move them from someone who's interested to someone who is looking at scheduling. All right? Which moves us to step 3, which is conversion leading to scheduling. And again, here there are points I can get into, and I'll get into them after I explain the cycle of production. But, were they scheduled for the correct appointment time, the correct amount of time, etc. But assuming we've scheduled them, we now move to step 4, which is the person is confirmed. And then we have step 5, patient is in the chair. All right, so we walk it backwards. We have response. They were handled on the phone, they were converted and scheduled, they were confirmed, they arrived. That's the cycle of production. And you might add a little something, up to you. I know some of our clients like a little bit of information gathered before they walk in to meet the new patient. And I'm talking like let's say for your standard new patient initial, right? This would be different for an emergency, but they want a little bit of info about this patient. Either in your input form should have that data. When was the last time they saw a doctor? Is there anything they want to talk to the dentist about? Were they recommended any treatment at the practice they were in? Did they do it, etc.? And then when they arrive, because usually if you're seeing them in your chair, your assistant's going to probably take some x-rays. And if the hygienist is seeing, they're going to be talking to the patient. There might be some other questions you want asked before you walk in the room. So a little bit of the legwork is done. And you could decide whatever's best for you. And you just look at stuff you would ask. And there are probably questions you should ask yourself. And there are questions that your team can ask. All right. So again, this cycle of production for a new patient is response, step 1, response, step 2, phone skills conversion, step 3, scheduled, step 4, confirmed, and step 5, in the chair. So let's keep it simple. If this is the cycle of production, and I'm aware of it, and my team is aware of it, the cycle of production for a new patient, and we're not getting enough new patients or we've seen a drop, we have a problem at one or more points on this cycle. In other words, performance at one or more points in this cycle, response, skill, phone skills, conversion, etc., is unacceptable or the area is underperforming. And assuming we know our cycle of production, like those 5 steps I just laid out, and again, like I said, I'm talking about new patients here, but we could talk about case acceptance, we could talk about scheduling, we could talk about hygiene, hiring, doesn't matter. As long as you know the cycle of production, the next thing is where you have to have an understanding of what is acceptable and unacceptable levels of performance. That becomes critical at each of the various steps. It's how you determine what the problem is. Now, you naturally do this, let's say with a patient. If I come into your practice and I'm holding the right side of my face and you look in my mouth, what are you looking for? If you see a tooth and it looks fine and there's nothing wrong with it and it looks good on the x-ray and I'm not complaining about it, are you worried about that tooth? No, you're looking for, oh, wow, there's swelling in the gum here. We have a little bit of decay. You're looking for the anomaly. What isn't looking the way that it should look? That's what you're interested in finding, because once you fix that, I will no longer be holding the right side of my face in pain. So we're doing a similar thing here, but we're doing it with the office. We're doing it with production, the cycle of production. So with this in mind, and again using our new patient example, let me walk you through this so you can get an idea of what it is I'm talking about. So let's start with step 1, response, okay, a lead. So do I need to be a marketing expert to know if my marketing is working? Absolutely not. What I do need to do, though, is I have to have a good idea of what is an acceptable level of response to whatever marketing I am doing, whether it's postcards, pay-per-click, etc. In other words, how many leads should I expect from what I am sending or spending? That's all. So, and most people get this wrong. Like, I'll pose this question to you, and I'll give a little pause so you can think of an answer. And I'm not talking about sending this to patients. Let's say we sent out a postcard to your general area, to non-patients, and it was, a discounted cleaning of some kind for them to come into your practice, a $99 cleaning exam and full mouth x-ray or scan or cone beam or whatever. If I sent out a postcard in your area to 10,000 people, how many responses should you get? Like, what would be an acceptable level of response for postcards? Send out 10,000, how many calls should you get? Give you a second to think about this. Now, normally when I ask this question, people will say, oh, well, at least 3%. In other words, 300 calls, or, 1%, 100 calls. Both wrong. If you're sending that to patients of record, like if you send a postcard out to, your patient base saying use it or lose it, it's time to use your benefits. With patients, I'd expect a higher level of response, 1%, 2%, 4%. With non-patients, the industry average for responses to a postcard is 0.25%, meaning if you send out 10,000 postcards, you're going to get 25 phone calls. So now if I'm walking in to this area, I'm going, is my marketing working? And I see I sent out 10,000 postcards, and let's say it did well. Let's say I got 0.5%, I got 50 phone calls. If I'm thinking that I should be getting 1 or 2 or 3%, I'm going to go, wow, this postcard stinks. Well, no, it doesn't actually. It's doing well. So you have to have an idea of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. Could you get more than 0.25%? Absolutely, if it's a really good postcard. But where I'd be more worried is if I'm getting less. So let's say I send out 10,000 postcards and I get 5 phone calls. Well, I have a problem with my postcard. There's a problem with the postcard, which I'll get into here in a second. But you'd want to know this for each of your marketing channels. How much do I spend on PPC and what kind of response I get? Right? Now, one thing that's interesting with PPC is it really depends on a few things. One of them is, what am I marketing for? Like if you're marketing for dental implants, that's an expensive click. A lot of people are doing that in your area. All right. So you're going to spend more for that prospective patient. But the idea is that you're spending more where there's more potential value. If you have to do a few implants on somebody, and so one person comes in and it costs you $500, but you do a $10,000 case or a $15,000 case, that worked. Do you see? But if I'm doing dentist near me, emergency dentist, family dentist, whatever, I don't expect to spend as much as I'm going to spend for an implant patient. And that same thing applies to funnels as well. With implant funnels, you're going to spend like $800 a lead, but the idea is that the risk reward pays off, right? There's a good return on investment. So how would I know all of these things? Well, how do I know them? How did I find out? I researched, I looked. You can find this stuff online. You can look around. You know, I put a lot of it here on the podcast. You can call us. These are basic metrics because then you can go, oh, well, this marketing's working. And how do I know if my marketing's working? It's getting me responses. That's all. It's not going to get me new patients. It's going to get me responses. My phone, whoever handles my phone is going to get me new patients. So if it's getting responses, marketing's working. So I have to have an idea of how much response should I be getting for how much I'm spending. So if I'm getting no response to a postcard, or I'm spending $5,000 a month in marketing spend for pay-per-click, and I'm getting no clicks or very few clicks or very few responses, my problem is my marketing then. Do you see? Like, this is the only time your marketing's the problem, when it's getting you no response. Now, I should mention with pay-per-click, the other odd thing that can happen is they may see your ad and go, ooh, click, boom. And then they get to whatever page it drives them to, and that's terrible. So then nobody clicks when they get to the page. So that's kind of the two stages of pay-per-click. But either way, that's still a marketing problem. So let's say I had a problem where I'm sending out a zillion postcards and I'm getting 2 phone calls. Well, what could be wrong? Some stupid stuff you wouldn't believe that I've seen. You could have the wrong number on the postcard. I've seen that before. Either the printer messed up or whoever designed the card messed up. I had one client who had a phone number for a website that they had paid somebody for the website. It was like a landing page type website. Then they stopped using them, and so the company took the phone number. So then they had no phone number, right? Or I've seen it where postcards are sent to the wrong area. You're in Dallas and someone's sending postcards to Houston. You're not going to get a lot of patients from there. I've also seen it where the stuff wasn't mailed. That's why you want proof. There's usually a receipt they get from the post office. I always do it. One other thing you can do, and this is like, I'm dating myself here. Back in the day when most marketing was mail, we used to always have on our list something called a stinger or a seed name. What is that? Well, I would put my own name on there. I'd give myself another name and put my home address to see, is this thing actually going out? Because then because you know a few things there. Number one, did it go out because I got it? All right. And I don't want my name associated with that postcard because otherwise whoever's doing it for me could know to make sure that one got mailed out. But you could tell I'm paranoid about that. So I'm running into this before where I've gone into mailing houses and found our mail on the floor when it was supposed to go out. This was years ago. And moved mailing houses. But I put my own name on there, or one of the staff's names on there, or something that lives in the area where I'm mailing to. Because then I know, A, did it actually go out? And B, how long did it take to get there? Because that can throw you off too sometimes. You send out a postcard and you're usually sending it out bulk. Bulk mail is not handled as efficiently as first-class mail. So then you send it out, and it might take a week to get there. But then you sent it out on a Monday, and you're like, why don't I have any calls, and it's Friday? But then you see the postcard hasn't arrived till the following Monday, if that makes sense. Okay? So, or it could just be a bad postcard. Just bad postcard, got you no response, in which case you got to fix that. With pay-per-click, you could, a few things could be happening with pay-per-click if you're getting no response. It could be bad ads, your landing page is bad, you're running it in the wrong area or at the wrong time. I've seen people who have run their ads at like 3 a.m. and there's no one there to answer the phones. People are like 75. I forget the number. Dan actually has these numbers. Dan Brown, who I had on a few weeks ago from Bloomberg Digital. But I think it's like a person 75 or 80. I'm making this up now. Not totally, but I remember it was bad. It's like 70 to 80% chance if someone gets a voicemail, they're just going to call somebody else. So if I'm running pay-per-click ads at 3 a.m, it's kind of a waste of money. All right. Or again, I've seen people run them in the wrong areas. They're running them 5 towns away that nobody would ever come to you. The other thing that might have happened to you without you realizing this, because we do pay-per-click, so I saw this happen, is pay-per-click just got more expensive. So did postage, by the way. It used to be 40-something cents for first-class postage. In 2019, it's now 70-something. Well, pay-per-click got expensive as well. So you might be having a $2,000 a month marketing spend, and you notice this drops off, and you go, gee, I wonder what's wrong. Well, you're spending that into the face of prices that in some cases have gone up by 20, 30, 70%. So you might have to spend a little more, unfortunately, to get the same thing. But if you raise your fees, it all works out. I'm not going to get into that, especially if you got a lot of PPOs. I know it's a problem, right? Anyway, all of these are points of understanding. experience asking questions, learning, etc. But you'll notice for all the things I just said, you don't have to be a marketing expert to know any of this. You could learn all of this in an hour or two. So again, if my new patients are down and I understand this stuff, I look at these things and I see my responses are unacceptable. Well, now I kind of note that down. I need to handle this. Like I project I should be getting 50 phone calls and I'm only getting 20. Okay, I got a problem. I got to sort this out. So one problem is responses. But now, even though I found an issue there and I'm going to handle that, I'm now going to still move through the rest of the cycle because what if my problem isn't just limited to the amount of response I'm getting? Let's say my phone stuff is terrible or my confirmation process is a problem. I need to find that out too. So now I'm going to move to steps 2 and 3. And now I want to point something out. As I'm doing this, I'm not asking people, hey, how many phone calls are we getting? A lot. How are the phones being handled? Really good. No, I'm actually looking at this stuff. Show me. Show me how many people responded. Show me the dashboard. Because those are facts, okay? Those are numbers. Those cannot be fabricated if I look at them and I actually physically see them. And I'm not saying that people who work for you have this idea they have to fabricate things or lie to you, but you know, and any executive who works with me knows that there are certain words they don't use, a lot, tons, many, etc. I want numbers because numbers actually tell me what's really going on. Okay, 14 people did this, 75 people did this, or the response was low. Okay, what's low? 3 people. Okay, that's terrible. Do you see? I want numbers. So I get to steps 2 and 3. I move to phone skills and conversion. I've done a ton of episodes on, reimagining the dental receptionist. I think we have like 3 or 4 episodes on reception. You should definitely check those out, right? Because you should have an idea of how your phone should be handled ahead of time. And I say this only because one of the things we've done for years is mystery calls. We'll do mystery calls. Like if you're interested in getting a mystery call into your practice and you want us to grade your receptionist, I'll put a link to it on the episode webpage. It is completely free. In states where we're allowed to record, because our software records it, we will actually play the recording and give you a critique. If we are not allowed to record, we take very copious notes, so we have a really good idea of what we ran into there, and then we will give you a report over the phone. We'll call you and go over each point so you understand it. But one of the things we've found over the years is when we're talking to a doctor, we'll play the recording for them. We go, okay, what did you think of that? And they go, oh, well, he or she was very professional. They were very, very nice. We're not grading them on nicest. It's true they were polite and they were very nice, but they missed these 5 chances to actually convert this patient. So you have to have an idea of what that should look like. Now, how I can help you with that, I'm throwing a lot of links up this episode. I can give you a link to our phone skills ebook. It's free. Very cool. Lays out some ideas of how to handle different scenarios, including shoppers and, do you take my plan, etc. I'll put that link on the episode webpage. We also have a course on our online platform, DDS Success, called Phone Skills. I'll put a link to that as well if you want to check that out. All right, so how am I going to determine how well we're doing with this? Well, the first thing is I need to see a list of who actually called, and then I compare that list to who actually converted. So that's why I'm mentioning I'm doing steps 2 and 3 here at the same time. My call list and my conversion list. If I don't have a call list, I won't be able to determine conversions. Like if the only people that are being noted down are people who actually scheduled, do the math on this with me for a second. Let's say I get 100 phone calls and only 20 people schedule. Okay, well, so let's say they're only keeping track of the people who schedule. I could look at that and go, wow, that's 20 out of 20. That's really well done. Joe, Bob, or whoever my receptionist is. But I'm missing the fact that they blew 80 phone calls, right? So I need a thorough call log. You've got your dashboards with pay-per-click. You may have a special phone number for your postcards, which has a special dashboard that you can look at as well. I'm still a fan of every new patient call coming into the practice should be logged. Again, I'll put a link to the call log on the episode webpage if you're interested. But it could be a little spreadsheet that whoever answers the phone just keeps up because I want to be able to compare who actually contacted my practice to who actually scheduled. Then what I'm going to do is I want to listen to calls. Now, which calls am I going to listen to initially? I'm probably going to listen to 1 or 2 conversions to see how well they did there, right? Because let's say I listened to a call where a patient called in and the receptionist did not handle the phones well, but the patient scheduled. Well, that's good. That patient was very motivated, thankfully. But if someone needs some handling, that person is not going to do the best job. So what I'm probably going to do at that point is I'm going to listen to also the calls that they didn't convert. And I'm looking for basic stuff. I'm going to look at, were they welcoming? Were they nice? Did they sound confused? Did they sound overloaded, continuously putting people on hold or having to stop to check out another patient? I'm going to be honest with myself, and I'll tell you, I've said this before, listening to these calls sometimes can feel cringy. I've done it, and you'll sit there and think, why didn't you ask that question? Why didn't you say their name? It's fine. Look, most of the people out there answering the phones, they just need training. They're good people. They just need to be trained. It is cringy, but you have to start somewhere, right? You have to confront this. But you listen to some basic stuff. Are they welcoming? Are they nice? Do they put people on hold continuously? Is the phone being answered within 3 rings? Do they announce, do they do the script they're supposed to do when they answer the phone and say the practice name and give whoever's calling their name? Do you have a set input form that's being followed once you have established why the patient is calling the practice? And I would place special attention on the calls that couldn't convert. And I would think to myself as I'm listening, could I have handled this person? And then note down exactly where did my receptionist mess up? But now I'm going to compare my call log now to my conversions. How many people called to how many people scheduled. We're going to look at how many people arrived later. We're going to look at where we live. Are we, conversion-wise, are we getting 100 phone calls and converting 20 to 25 of them? Well, we have the average practice. And you have to be really critical about what you're counting as a phone call, because I've seen people get funky with how they count the numbers. Oh, that was a shopper call. We're not going to count that. That person asked if we took their insurance. We're not going to count that. No, every potential new patient inquiry counts as a call, okay? And then I want to know from that how many actually scheduled. If we're at 50%, now we're starting to get somewhere. All right? We do that. We compare this against each other, regardless of justifications. They were bad patients, they were shoppers, etc., to see brutally, honestly, where are we? So whether we have leads or not, we're still going to check this. For example, let's say we're getting leads and poor conversion. Okay, then we need to work on our conversion, right? Or we're getting no leads and we have good conversion. Okay, we got to handle our leads. We got a marketing problem. Or we're getting no leads and we have bad conversion. Now we have our hands full, right? But either way, we first are going to establish what is wrong. We can do little handlings as we go, but it gives us a picture of what's really wrong, which then moves us to our next step, confirmations. All right, so we're looking at patients that were scheduled, and we're going to look at 2 numbers here. How many new patients were scheduled and how many actually showed up? And obviously you want to use a month's sample size. So let's say we're doing the month of, April, right? So we're going to look at how many patients called in April and how many of those patients actually showed up. That might bleed into May a little bit. Do you see? Because some of those patients who were scheduled in April might be coming in May. But I want to get a real good idea of we scheduled 100 patients and how many showed up, right? So I want to see what our show rate is. So again, what's good here? Well, I can tell you what's bad. Under 80% would be bad. Okay. I'd like to see it in the high 90s, or at worst, maybe 92, 93%. Now, again, some of this depends here. If it's free type appointments, your show rate is going to be lower. That tends to happen with implant funnel type stuff. I've seen it as bad as where 1 out of 10 show up, and that's not great. But if it's your normal, hi, I'm calling to get my teeth cleaned, that show rate should be in the high 90s. But let's say we're running at 50%. Okay, so we scheduled 100 new patients and we only got 50. So there's a couple problems here potentially. Either A, the scheduling was bogus, right? And you're normally not going to listen to the calls where patients scheduled, but I would listen to the calls where a person scheduled and didn't show. So was that person really scheduled properly? One thing I'm going to look at, because part of the problem might be my scheduling process. Or it might be my confirmation system is broken. There's one other reason I'll get into in a second. But so what am I going to do? I'm going to look at the patients that scheduled and didn't show. I'm going to listen to the calls. Are they good, bad? Were they really scheduled? Okay. Let's say they were scheduled like they were supposed to be. Then I would look at how I'm confirming. I did a whole episode on confirmations, and I'm not going to get into it again here. But for some reason, with the advent of technology, the finer arts of confirmation have been lost. But here's one thing I just will tell you. New patients, large procedures on the doctor's schedule should always be verbally confirmed. Always verbally confirmed. I would not handle that by text. It's much easier for someone to click Y on a text and not show up than it is to actually say it to you and not show up. So that's kind of an important appointment, not that the other ones aren't. But depending on the amount of time I have, I'm minimally going to talk to new patients and larger procedures in the doctor's schedule. All right, always. So they have to be talked to verbally. If you're not doing that, I would then switch that. The other thing, as I was mentioning, is another reason you might have no-shows with new patients is you're scheduling too far out. Would also mess with new patient conversion. So let's say whoever's handling the phones is good and you're getting a good amount of leads from your marketing, but then somebody calls your practice and they go, yeah, I'm new to the area. I want to get my teeth cleaned. You go, okay, our first opening is 5 weeks from now. So what is that person going to do? It really depends on who that person is. If this is a referral, they might schedule 5 weeks from now because they've actually been referred to your practice. You know, their wife goes there or their coworker said you're awesome. If it's a Google ad or a postcard, they may not schedule. They're going to just look for the next person they can call, especially if it's dentists near me. Lots of people have specials. Some people will schedule and just not show. Some people will schedule and cancel later. And some people will schedule and stick. But the longer out into the future you push it, the better chance that person is not going to show up. You also kind of shoot yourself in the foot if you go hog wild with marketing and you can't get people in. It's sort of like I'm selling something and it's not available, which some people think that's a good thing. I mean, there's always, this supply and demand thing. I've seen people get into this frame of mind with courses, so I sell all kinds of courses here. And if I told you, well, the next we're enrolling for next year, I'd lose signups as a result of that. I believe in delivering as quickly as humanly possible. I think that that's smart. So what we teach our clients is you want to get a new patient in within 24 to 48 hours. You go, well, how am I going to do that? Well, you got to figure it out. There's different ways you can do it. We can help. But unless it's on them. So if I call your practice and I go, look, I'm leaving town this weekend, come in the week after next, that's on me. But you should have something available within the next max 2 days. But that can mess up your marketing. If you're spending all this money on marketing and you can't get people in and you lose patients as a result, it gets silly. Which brings us to the last step, step 5, which is the patients in the chair. And this is where the cycle of production terminates because you have your deliverable. And again, you could qualify this a little bit. You could have certain questions asked of the patient before you see them, etc. But if I have a problem and I walk through each of these steps as I've described to you, and I have an idea of what's acceptable and what's not, I'll spot what's wrong, and then fixing it becomes really easy. I go through and I see my responses are bad. Promo's no good, change my promo. Not stop my marketing or promo, change it. Or my conversion's terrible. I'll have to train my receptionist, possibly replace the receptionist if they just can't train, right? So that they can handle the phones. If I have high no-shows, I have to change my confirmation process or my scheduling process. You get the idea. And like I said at the beginning of this, you can apply this to any area of your practice. Let's say case acceptance is bad. You're not producing enough because if you think about it, you're not going to produce what patients don't accept. So if we start with the deliverable of, patient in the chair ready to start treatment, and again, I'm not saying a patient's a deliverable. I'm talking about this cycle of production, right? Patient in the chair ready to start treatment, which means they're paid, they've accepted the treatment, etc. What's the step before that? Well, they would have had to schedule. What's the step before that? They would have had to pay. What's the step before that? Well, I'd have to present the treatment plan. What's the step before that? You need a patient who needed treatment. You could walk this back. Where would I get patients who need treatment? New patients and patients of record. You could do this with any area of your practice, and if you have an idea of, what's good, what's bad, and you could figure out easily what's going wrong, and then you can fix it. And what it does is it brings about a sense of peacefulness in a sense. It makes life a lot easier doing this way because you're never in a mystery as to what's wrong. You can always figure it out and turn it around very easily if you understand those two things, the cycle of production for the area, which you kind of already know or can figure out real easy, and then having an idea of what's good and what's bad. Anyway, bit of a longer episode, but I wanted to throw this out there. Try it out. Let me know how it goes. You can always email me with questions as you go at jeffb@mgeonline.com. Don't forget I have those downloads. I'll leave them on the episode webpage. I don't remember them all off the top of my head, but things like the scheduling ebook. I also have a new patient call log if you want one as well, and there's also the link to DDS Success. In any event, I hope this helps you. Please use this liberally. I wish you the best. If you want to know more about MGE, you can find us online at mgeonline.com or call us at 800-640-1140. Folks, have a great week, and we'll see you at the next episode.